Hi, everybody. I'm Siren Jag. I'm a makeup enthusiast and a commentator on the drama end of the true crime community here on YouTube. I'm also a panel hopper, and I do part-time music and comedy and anything else I like here on the platform. Also a Sunday night karaoke host, and tonight, why am I dressed up like this? Well, I'm going to be rolling back into some old waters and going to be diving into a heavy drama stream. Yeah, you remember that old chestnut, don't you? Where I take some snippets from old music and movies and TV and literature and give them my cold reading and my own unique flair and present them for your own amusement. Yeah, we're going to be diving back into that because I had some time to spare. And why not? Why the heck not? So, without further ado, adieu, we're just going to dive right in. And my connection is just not going well. Here we go. Come on. Come on, computer. Get along with me. Going to start closing things. Let's see if that helps. Let's close that. Close that. Close that. Close that. Close that. There we go. Now, let's begin. Dashing and daring, courageous and caring, faithful and friendly with stories to share. All through the forest they sing out in chorus, marching along as their song fills the air. Gummy bears! Bouncing here and there and everywhere. High adventure that's beyond compare. They are the Gummy Bears. Magic and mystery are part of their history, along with the secret of gummy berry juice. Their legend is growing. They take pride in knowing they'll fight for what's right in whatever they do. Gummy bears! Bouncing here and there and everywhere. High adventure that's beyond compare. They are the Gummy Bears. Dashing and daring, courageous and caring, faithful and friendly, with stories to share. All through the forest they sing out in chorus, marching along as their song fills the air. Gummy bears! Bouncing here and there and everywhere. High adventure that's beyond compare. They are the Gummy Bears. Oh, Gummy Bears! When a friend's in danger, they'll be there. Lives and legends that we all can share. They are the Gummy Bears. They are the Gummy Bears. They are the Gummy Bears. Oh. are the gummy bears. And why would I read that, do you ask? Well, this is a very special heavy drama stream. This is a very special heavy drama stream because it is going to be entirely Amazon reviews for gummy bears. If I had reading glasses, I would be putting them on for you. I'll start by saying that these gummies do live up to their tagline, World's Best. However, the last shipment I received was evidently used in a warehouse-wide competitive hacky sack tournament before being placed in a neat little box on my doorstep. And it looks like, or any indication, I'd say each of the teams lost most handedly to one another despite multiple skirmishes before going into overtime. A valiant effort for either side, I'm sure. Or would it be possible for a bag of gummy bears to start moonlighting as a crash test dummy for Prius versus Greyhound collisions? Or ballistics testing? Do I need to pay extra now for one that hasn't? Boy, 2020 sure has been rough on everyone, and that seems to go for 12-pound bags of gummy bears as much as anything else, even if they are the best tasting. Hey Amazon, please send me a bag that hasn't been held hostage by insurgents, because that'd be super cool if you did that. Big thanks. I bought this as a fun prank to try to get all my friends to eat the sugar-free gummy bears because we've all heard the stories. Anyway, for science, I decided to eat it to see how good the prank would be on my own, as I was working late and it was delivered that afternoon and a midnight snack sounded great. So, I'm sitting at my desk and pound the first package down, and I wait. Nothing happens that night, and I don't feel anything when I wake up either, other than a little extra gassy, but I'm a gassy dude, so I don't think too much of it. So, I get to work and start to think about that the reputation of sugar-free gummy bears was a lie, since it had been about 8 hours since I ate them originally and nothing happened. So, thinking the prank is a bust, I eat a second package, because gummy bears are great. Then the farts hit. These aren't the farts that you say, "Excuse me," and everyone maybe giggles and moves on with their lives either. These aren't even the SBDs. These are the movers and shakers of farts. My office and chair smell like these farts 3 days later. I've tried air fresheners and candles every day. I feel like I'm sitting in my own smelly butt. Then, in the middle of a meeting, my butt gives me the tingle. Like Spider-Man, sensing a car being thrown at him, my butt senses the flow of an unstoppable river. I turned off my camera in the middle of a sentence and muted my mic and barely made it to the toilet before this entire history of everything I've ever eaten began rolling out of my colon. I spent all that meeting and the next meeting optimizing my route from my office to the bathroom. When no more was coming out, I began to think it might end soon, but soon my underwear learned why you never trust a fart. Since this moment, I began to hold a strict no-fart policy. Anyway, if you are like me and feel the need to perform your own science experiment, I just want you to know that you are not alone and you are forever in my heart. Conclusion: trust all the stories you've read and heard. This one is titled, I Feel Reborn. So, the lady and I bought these after I told her the myth that sugar-free gummy bears are practically as sweet as stool softener. We both walked this trial by fire cautiously by only eating a few bears the day we got them. No effect. Not swayed by this, the next day we grabbed our bears in our little curious mitts and gobbled down about 10 each. Still no effect. This is a good thing, I now know. Boy, do I miss the times when we were enjoying the mystery and joy of these bears. Day 3 rolled around and my lady was taking a nap, so I decided, I'm big, I'm brave, I can eat 25 gummies. These were words uttered from a fool. About 30 minutes after my critical error, my stomach felt like someone was using my insides for batting practice for the home run derby. My brow was non-stop releasing sweat. I felt like what I think childbirth must feel like. I was a breaking man. Then came the gas. Oh Lord, the gas! You could power a 16-wheeler going from Maine to California with the flatulence that was leaving my body. This lasted for about an hour. It was about this point my girl woke up, and I told her the grave mistake I'd made. So what does she do? Go get some gummies to experience what I've experienced. That poor woman. We started making dinner when it hit me. Oh man, did it hit me. They say only God can judge me, but that is a lie. My neighbors I know were judging me as wave after wave of the diarrhea tsunami hit my porcelain. I bent down on my towel as I pushed through the voyage. After about 5 minutes of pure agony subsided, I left the bathroom. Shame hung heavy over my head, knowing I didn't respect the bears. Those cute little bears took me on a religious experience, an experience of pain, laughter, and loss of Glade air freshener. Never again on my life will I disrespect the bears. They are there for absolute emergency. Every time I open my pantry from here forward, I'll see them staring at me, smiling at me, reminding me of the trip I took to the bottom of the circle of toilet hell. No report back from the lady yet. She won't leave the bathroom. May God have mercy on her soul. Oh, and they taste pretty good. I'd recommend refrigerating them. It helps with the texture. This next one is titled, Gave My Cat Nightmares. I'm giving this 5 stars for taste alone. These are not kind bears. They may look nice, but they will make their way out of your body in the most vicious way. I bought these because I was backed up. After reading the reviews, I thought, why not? I'll give myself a little healthy snack and make myself poo. 2 in 1 shot, right? Wrong. I definitely ate more than a handful, and all was well until the wee morning hours when all was quiet. I was still awake with cramps and waddled my way to the potty. Nothing happened but pain. sat there and placed the small trash can on my lap. I felt nauseous and sweaty. Finally, after 10 minutes, Satan dug his way through and immediately scared my cat away from its watchful post at my feet. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Dumb and Dumber, but the restroom scene where Jeff Daniels slashes onto the toilet was where I was in life. I eventually made my way back to bed. 10 minutes under the warmth of covers, I was startled awake, fought stepping my way past the frightened cat, who then hid under the bookcase. Upon the throne, I began texting my job, letting them know I would not be able to attend. I told them of the cursed Satan bears I greedily gulped down. There was no way I'd be able to stay trapped in a vehicle for 5 hours when I couldn't even trust a boot. For 4 hours I suffered, not in silence. The chocolate waterfalls could be heard throughout the house. My husband and cat will never be the same again. Damn you, Satan bears. Still delicious. 10 out of 10 would recommend to a friend. 0 out of 10 would try again. Apparently I didn't silence my phone. Let me rectify that. What's the deal with sugar-free candy? It feels like every review I've done lately has included at least one bodily function, and that's just not right. Please don't get me wrong. These things are absolutely delicious and are pretty reasonably priced in a 2-pound bag, but for some reason, my body just doesn't get along with them. To say they make gas would be an understatement. People could clearly hear my guts churning in large rooms. I wasn't aware they made X-Lax in so many vibrant colors and fruity flavors until about a half hour after my first handful. I ended up sounding like the horn section in the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, and the show went on for hours. I'm pretty sure it wasn't my leg that broke during that performance. If they served beer and pickled eggs on Taco Tuesday in a Mexican prison with a side of bubbly, bottled water straight from the Ganges River, it wouldn't be half as bad as the cleansing effect of these gummies have had on my intestines. Note to self, order candles. And Beano. This one's titled Drums in the Deep. They are coming. I looked at the reviews online and thought it would be fun to see if the stories are true. So, the morning of my test for staff sergeant, I checked my mail and saw that they had arrived. In my excitement, I did not think. I ate a few handfuls between the tests to pass the time. They are very sweet and taste great, but don't let the cute bears fool you. They are after your pooper's soul. Halfway through my second test, I felt a rumble. I looked to see if people were running from an earthquake, but it wasn't so. Surely that couldn't have been me. Another and another, then a squeaker. Oh no. What had I done? To leave the room for any reason would be to forfeit the test. A hot sweat came creeping on the back of my neck, reaching to my forehead. I began to think, was this pain worth my future? And then a thought, was my future worth this pain? In between not-so-silent attempts to relieve the stress, my stomach rumbled and glugged like a flooded engine. I can do this, I told myself. I must do this. 10 questions to go. I summoned all my knowledge and prayed to any god that would listen to deliver me from this curse. As I went, I could feel the glare of those unfortunate around me. It didn't matter if I didn't hurry, they would have a lot more to see. 3, 2, 1. Finished. As I ran to the front of the room, half covered in sweat, I waited for her to say I was clear before jolting to the bathroom. As I pulled down my pants, it began. With a sizzle and shots of fury, it felt like I had a Roman candle and a sparkler inside of me. I wonder if this was purgatory or the inferno. The minutes dragged on for what seemed like forever. Finally, all was still. I made it. It was finally over. Or was it? 10 out of 10. Ruined me for life. Would recommend. Do they taste great? No. Is the texture better than other mainstream brands? No. Will you cleanse your colon at that pack of gum you ate when you were 5? Yes. Testing seems to be a common theme here. It was my last class of the semester, and the final exam was worth 30% of our grade. After a late night study session, I felt confident, but I had to decide between sleeping in or cooking breakfast. My eyelids chose sleep. After a late night study session, I felt confident, but I had to decide. Oh, I already read that sentence. My stomach later regretted this decision, and after several uncomfortable stomach growls, I finally decided to make a quick stop by the campus bookstore and grab a snack before my test. Since the semester was ending and everyone was going home for the summer, a lot of items were on sale, including the snacks and candy that they kept up front. Being in the hungry state that I was in, it felt only logical to pick the largest, yet least expensive candy in order to get more bang for my buck. And there they sat, 2 bags of sugar-free gummy bears, buy one, get one free. What deal? I thought naively. I would eat 1 bag before my test and 1 bag afterwards. As I walked to class, I gleefully chewed on those abominable little bastards, unaware of the utter mayhem that they would soon unleash upon my poor, poor anus. I sat down at my desk as the professor informed us that, due to issues with cheating in the past, restroom breaks would be prohibited until the completion of the exam. I'll give you 10 minutes to use the restroom now. This will be your last chance. Any takers? The demon bears hadn't released their unholy necromancy upon my stomach yet, so in my moment of ignorant foolishness, I remained seated, still munching on those miniature bear-shaped bombs. After the students, wise enough to take the professor's offer, had returned, the professor handed out the test. I was 6 questions in when it happened. It started subtly at first, almost like a slight tingly sensation in my lower abdomen. I thought nothing of it, assuming my intestines were just doing their thing. Little did I know that my intestines were trying desperately to warn me of the horror that was on the horizon. By question 9, it happened again, but this time it was followed by a sharp pain, as if those internal hellions had orchestrated an attack upon my colon. I fought to contain the groan that tried escaping my lips. It was at this point I began to panic. Something was going horribly wrong, and I needed to get through this test before it got any worse. By question 14, my worst fear was upon me. The Satan bear's burning, hot, liquidy, dark magic crashed against my anal sphincter like a tidal wave. I was able to close the hatch just in time, but those relentless, toxic bears beat against it like orcs breaking down the doors of Helm's Deep. I knew I would be able to so much as shift in my seat without risking a breach. I kept fighting through my exam, clenching my cheeks with all my might. Beads of sweat began rolling down my neck. Suddenly, a loud, gurgling war cry came from my belly, and the entire class lifted their heads. At this point, nothing mattered except expelling this ungodly presence from my bowels. With 15 questions left, I promptly wrote C for every answer and ran out of the classroom. My professor yelled something, but I was too preoccupied with the volcanic eruption that needed to take place before I could find sweet, sweet relief. I burst into the restroom like the Kool-Aid Man, and behold, the handicap stall was empty. Sun rays from the adjacent window shone upon it as if it were a gift from God himself. It took me less than 0.5 seconds to undo my belt buckle, pull down my pants, and finally relax my weary buttocks upon the toilet seat. It took absolutely no effort to expel this demon. Almost immediately, the floodgates of hell were opened, and the damned, liquefied souls of an entire bag's worth of gummy bears cried as they burned through my sphincter and into the watery abyss below. I had never felt such simultaneous relief and anguish in my life. After 30 more minutes of this, I immediately went home, dug a hole in my backyard, and burned the remaining bag of gummy bears. I leave with this. Do not, I repeat, do not eat these spawns of Satan. Not only did they cause me to fail my final test, but the anguish I experienced is something I wouldn't wish upon anyone, not even my worst enemy. The only place these godforsaken hellbears belong are buried deep below the earth's surface. Oh, I have more. It's my I makeup is lovely. Thank you. This was the day my life changed. I bought a bag of these delicious Satan snacks, and they took me back to the past. It took me back to the day Pompeii erupted. Instead of lava, there was hot brown liquid feces exploding out of what could be the black pit of hell. I was sitting on my toilet, sweaty as fuck. It felt like I was in a sauna after drinking veggie-free kombucha while being punched in the gut by Arnold Schwarzenegger. The worst part was I didn't have any toilet paper. I questioned myself if I should use my dog to wipe my sweaty crack of hell. But I'd rather shoot him before I put him through that hell-like place. All in all, 10 out of 10. Great gift. Would buy again. I sit here writing this review at 4 a.m. from my porcelain throne, a fixture you will become all too familiar with if you choose to eat these cute little bears from the pits of hell. I had to eat a pound of these little bastards after Man City must have thought they were playing American football the other week and lost to a team of Arsenal scrubs. They were a bit chewy, but overall appeared to be nothing more than your average gummy bears. After about 2 hours with little more than some mild stomach cramps, feeling like one would expect from eating a pound of any candy, I began to wonder if I'd gotten some duds. Like the slow build-up of a Martin Scorsese film, however, those bears were waiting for their baptism scene to destroy my insides. It started with some cramping, very akin to doing 1,000 crunches and then being forced to hold the 1,001st crunch indefinitely. Then came the initial run, which opened the proverbial floodgates. I'm over 30, and I'm beginning to wonder if these bears know that and want to send me back to the can for each year I've been on this earth to make me wonder why I'd ever been born. In between gastrointestinal bouts of pressure washing the inside of my toilet from my anus, I lay in bed, feeling as if someone were to punch me in the stomach, I'd explode, turning the walls of my bedroom into a soiled Jackson Pollock rendition. To give you an idea, I'd spent $50 ordering the UFC pay-per-view only to willingly miss the last 2 to 3 fights on the main card because I didn't want to stray too far from my master bathroom. Thankfully for me and my marriage, fearing what might be coming, I convinced my wife to spend the evening at my sister-in-law's because, trust me, fellas, nothing will be gained from your significant other experiencing this with you. I'm no longer in pain, but I'm still having to make trips back to my master bath on a regular basis. Eat these if you dare, but be forewarned, they are not to be trifled with unless you want your toilet to be a staging ground for repeat fecal rehearsals of the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones. I got some of these in my stocking for Christmas. I guess Santa hates me. I thought the things people said about sugar-free gummies were exaggerated. What a fool I was. I write this in the hopes that future generations will break the cycle and never have to live through what happened to me in the harrowing hours that were to come. That night I lay awake in bed, sweating, farting profusely, and unable to sleep because I had to run to the bathroom every few minutes. The stench was incomparable to anything I had ever smelled before. It was like being anally R-worded in reverse. To pass the time, I read the article about Hiroshima and Nagasaki on Wikipedia. Perhaps I felt a kinship with the victims of the attacks because it was like a nuclear bomb had gone off in my bowels. If regular diarrhea is fat man and little boy, the effects of these villainous bears on my anus was tsar bomba. At one point, I recalled Marlon Brando's monologue from Apocalypse Now, and suddenly I understood everything. If I saw my worst enemy approaching a bowl of these, I would dive in front of it to save them from the horror of what I experienced on that black day. Woe betide anyone who fails to heed my warnings. Did you hear that sonic boom? Yeah, that was me after 3 of these. I ate half of a 6-ounce bag I picked up at CVS. They changed the color of the bag. I didn't know. I spent 24 hours in fetal position on my bathroom floor, repeating, "Please, God, why?" I still don't have an answer. One of our beloved physicians brought a bag of gummy bears to work to share with the staff one night shift. Not realizing they were the famous dreaded sugar-free gummies, multiple staff throughout the shift grabbed a handful of gummies while passing by, and each have their own near-miss stories, but this is mine. The next morning, I have to run an errand about an hour and a half from my house. On the drive home down a curvy backcountry road, my stomach suddenly begins to cramp, and I feel the immediate urge to empty my bowels. Frantic, as I realize I'm not going to make it home, I start searching for a place to pull over. The end of a gated logging road, perhaps? I'm speeding along, arching my back, practicing Lamaze breathing techniques, anything to stall the inevitable. I pass the first turnoff that has a sheriff's car parked at the end, and keep searching with sweat pouring down my forehead and bubbling noises in my guts that drown out the heavy metal on the stereo. Finally, I spot the end of a brushy trail and whip my truck sideways, thrusting the driver's side door open and leaping from the seat to scurry around to the other side. I turn around with fingers in the waistband, about to drop trow, and look up to my horror, realizing it is indeed the end of a driveway, and the folks outside are staring down toward me, probably wondering what this crazed individual is about to do. For several moments, I seriously considered just completing the task and running away, but couldn't imagine my parents seeing the cell phone video of myself on social media later in the day. I scurried back around the truck, and halfway there, my ability to hold back the hot lava flow of liquid stool from making a hasty exit out of my spasming rectum was lost, and I crapped my pants right there on the side of the road, standing next to my truck. My bowels cramped up and expelled every drop of liquid from my body. At that point, I'm now standing there with leggings full of hot liquid stool running into my shoes and debating on what the next best course of action should be. Of course, I have no extra clothes or any towels in my truck. What should I do? Should I call someone? Do I drive home the remaining 20 minutes? After a few moments of self-reflection, I decided to strip off my shirts and lay them on the seat of my truck and get inside. It was a rather uncomfortable drive home, with the windows all down and skin burning on the backs of my legs and buttocks. It was one of the longest 20-minute periods of time I've ever experienced in my entire life. I alternated between crying and laughing at the situation and checking the speedometer like a paranoid drunk, thinking I can't possibly get pulled over right now because what would I say? Yes, officer, I crapped my pants. That's what the smell is. Tears streaming down my face. I finally arrive home, screeching to a halt in the driveway in front of the open automatic garage door I triggered as I was drifting the curve onto my road. Holding the bottoms of my pant legs closed tight, I awkwardly stagger into my house and immediately into the shower fully clothed. Fast forward 3 weeks and I'm at work hearing about the other incidents and the light bulb clicks on. 35 years old, and I had to reset the clock for the how long since you last crapped your pants countdown. Thanks, Dr. Hansen. Lesson learned, make sure the gummy bears are not the sugar-free version. I weighed 180 pounds before I ate these. I'm now a skeleton. My flight was leaving at 8 in the morning. After awakening and trying to get to the airport, I forgot to grab something to eat. This seems to be a theme. I usually take my time and do things in order, but not this day. I was traveling from Boston to LA, coming home from a work trip. I do it regularly, so nothing was new to me. I stayed in the same hotel and knew the time I needed to leave to get to the airport on time. During my work trip, I stopped at a convenience store and saw these gummy bears and thought they would be a perfect gift for my son Charlie. He loves gummy bears and gummy worms, so the morning I was to head back to LA, I slept through my alarm. That never happens. I rushed to get out of the hotel and threw those gummies in my carry-on bag to make it on time to the airport. After speeding and filling up gas in the rental, I made it to my gate as they were boarding. I get on the plane and head down the aisle to find my window seat near the middle of the plane. I asked politely for the two adorable older ladies sitting in the middle and aisle seats if I could pass by to my seat. They obliged. The lady in the middle must have been around 80 years old, so it took her some time to get up and make sure she was holding on to something so she didn't fall as she stepped into the aisle. I thanked them as I sat and settled into my seat. Fast forward 20 minutes as we reach our cruising altitude of around 30,000 feet in the air. As I reach into my carry-on bag to grab my headphones, I see the gummy bears. Since I'm hungry and need something, I decided to open them up and have just a few to hold me over until we land. I still wanted to save some for my son, so I maybe had 4 or 5. But I had 4 or 5 too many, because once the bears had a few minutes to adjust to their new home, they began to work. It started out with a little cramp, which is normal with gassing on a plane. You do not want to fart on a plane, so you hold it in. It is airplane etiquette. It would come and go over a few minutes, so I thought nothing of it. Then it got worse. The cramps intensified, the sweating started, and I began to notice the older ladies looking over at me. About 30 minutes into eating these bears, my thinking went from, oh, these are just farts, I can hold them, to, oh, dear God, not here. I have been a Christian my whole life, and this is the test. If there is a God, please help me leave this plane with my dignity intact. After waiting for the intense cramp wave to pass, I stood up and jumped over those two women. I could not wait for them to stand, so I stood up, my back facing them, and tried to shimmy past them. I think a toot came out because I heard one say, "Oh, Lord, was that you?" After reaching the aisle, I waddled to the back of the plane where the least amount of risk would be. To my dismay, it was in use. That left one bathroom left in the front. I looked down the aisle and saw my Mount Everest. I had to somehow keep my wet cheeks tighter than Fort Knox whilst wading forward, whilst praying no one gets out of their seats. After 5 minutes of stop and go, I made it to the bathroom and was pulling my pants down as I entered the bathroom. The door was still unlocked, so the sweet release was underway. I thought I died. I thought this was it. Even though I was on the throne confessing my sins, I thought my time was called. I'd lost count on how many knocks at the door there were. I must have been in there for 45 minutes, but I made it. I washed my hands. I threw water on my face. I opened the door. I saw the faces looking back at me. Apparently, the seal to the bathroom was not airtight, letting just the slightest airflow from that bathroom to the main cabin. These were daughters, mothers, and children looking at me. I could feel their questions and comments. What have you done? We still have 2 hours left. Please divert this plane. As I began walking down, the man in the first row of first class grabbed my arm. He said, "Hey man, where's your seat?" Confused, I told him, and he said, "Go get your stuff and come back and sit here. You need this more than me." I was embarrassed and ashamed. I had a family at home waiting for me. I recommend these bears to anyone, but please eat them responsibly. My friend hasn't been practicing social distancing during the pandemic, so I bought him a bag of these gummies for his birthday. It's now been 10 days since he left the house out of fear of pooping himself again. I'm not going to say sugar-free gummy bears are the cure for the coronavirus, but it certainly helps slow down the spread. To preface this, I will state that it is not good to upset anyone in the military supply network. This is especially true for a supply non-commissioned officer who can be both creative and vindictive to those who earn his ire. One of my biggest pet peeves was troopies who walked into my supply room and decided to go through things on my counter or desk. It is for this reason that I purchased 2 bags of these sweet little revenge snacks. I briefed my minions that morning that the snacks were to be unsullied by their hands. I told them that I would know, and it would not go unpunished by both myself and the higher powers. They thought I was joking, but decided to not test my authority before my eyes. With that said, I placed the bowl on the back part of the counter, just in reach of anyone loitering inside my supply room. The rules were posted for all to see when they came in, so they were warned. A large sign that said, "If you touch my stuff, you will be punished." They decided to test me, I guess. On this weekend, we were set to do general cleaning and maintenance within the battalion, so my desk was rather busy. Battalion headquarters supply room. I was in and out of my office all day. However, I made sure to take general measurements of my bowl of horror every time I came back. Shortly before lunch, my unholy wrath began to strike. My supply room is 1 door down from the latrines, and the row of mail commodes is on the other side of the wall from my desk. It was the first, but was not the last. It was initially heralded by the sound of Gabriel's trumpet escaping the sphincter of one poor soul. He hit the latrine and sounded as if he kicked the stall door open. For the next 30 minutes, I listened to the sounds of a live humpback whale being butchered by a blind man wielding a chainsaw. It was not long before another troop, this time a female, made her way to the latrine. She came from the indoor pistol range and had to cross in front of my door. I saw a pale woman with sweat streaking her face. She was hobbling with one hand on the wall for support and the other on her stomach, praying for just a little more time. For lunch, I ripped into an MRE and listened to the ever-growing chorus of those who had so far snuck down half of my bowl of brightly colored improvised colon explosive devices. I was not sure if the other side of the building was seeing the same activity in the latrines, but the smell reached my door by the end of the lunch. Good thing I was stationed with an infantry unit for the first 4 years of my career, so I was accustomed to bad odors. One of my minions did not return from lunch, so I volunteered another to perform a possibly suicidal scouting mission into the male latrine in search of my wayward soul. He was there and had been missing since the beginning of lunch. By 1500 hours, I was told that the unit was being locked down, and there was an emergency meeting in the battalion briefing room. I had a suspicion of the reason, but attended as I was ordered to do so. By this time, my bowl of gelatinous bowel howitzer ammunition was 1/4 filled. The meeting began slightly off schedule. At 15:22, Sergeant Major walked into the room and looked as if he had just performed a 3-day combat operation without sleep. The battalion XO walked in not long after and looked as if he had been intimately assaulted by a rather insistent horse. I used all of my military bearing to keep from cracking a joke about cavalry officers walking bow-legged. The battalion surgeon walked in and told us that there was a high chance that the unit had come in contact with a strange stomach bug. Roughly half of the battalion was complaining of stomach cramps and explosive diarrhea. He seemed to mostly be affecting headquarters and CCO, the company that was on the same side of the building as us, also the medics. Until symptoms cleared up, the unit was on lockdown and cleaning mode. I went back to my supply room with the intent to bag up the remaining evidence of my involvement, only to find that the bowl was missing. My minions were too wrapped up to notice anything, though, so I began a search for the evidence that would probably land me in front of a firing squad. The empty bowl was located in the admin offices. Someone found it and decided to liberate it from my supply room for the only group that I didn't want to upset, but they had already consumed the remainder of the biological weapons. As I left with the bowl, I heard the familiar sound of incoming fire from the senior pay clerk's desk, followed shortly after by what sounded like Lamaze breathing. That weekend, the entire building was cleaned from one side to the other. MREs were consumed in the hopes of plugging the torrential flood of liquid terror, and every door and window was opened with fans going over a cup of pine sol in every room. 3/4 of the enlisted and half of the officers were hit with the mystery stomach bug, and the medical supply room was in desperate need of more IV kits. I don't know if my message got across, but it was definitely an entertaining weekend. This is a cautionary tale, and unlike most of the other reviews on this product, this is a true story, and its authenticity can be qualified by a small news item that appeared in the Toronto Star's local news section during the month of April in 2013, much to my chagrin. I would consider myself a prudent man, not given to bouts of outspokenness or craving attention, and certainly not one to rock the boat. On any given day, I can be found reading a crime novel on a park bench in the middle of the city, soaking in the opulence of nature while nibbling on my tuna fish sandwiches and fending off the voracious gulls and squirrels that threaten to spoil my repose. This is me, law-abiding and introspective. Which is why it came as a shock to me to find myself incarcerated because of the devil's confectionery, Satan's sweetmeat, Lucifer's lozenges, the horror that is known as sugar-free gummy bears. I'll set the scene. It was late winter, early spring in Toronto, and the city had just been digging itself out from a late-season snowstorm. I was heading to Pearson International Airport for a red-eye flight to Amsterdam in order to give the Dutch arm of our company some training on the new software that had been installed. I'm deliberately being vague to prevent my place of work from being linked in any way to the incident that occurred. I had just finished packing, checked the time, and found I was running late. My flight was at 7:10 p.m., and it was now almost 5. Cursing softly, I ran out to the car and threw my bags in the trunk, hitting the gas a little harder than usual in my haste to make it to the long parking lot as soon as possible. Luckily, traffic was light on the 401, and I made it to the airport in record time, but knew that my chances of making this flight were still at risk if I didn't use my time wisely. I hadn't eaten since lunch. This is a theme. And I was feeling a bit hungry, my stomach rumbling loudly in protestation, which caused me to look around the other travelers rushing past me in the busy terminal, mortified that my bodily noises might be heard by others. I briskly checked my watch and decided that I had had enough time to grab a quick snack before going through the baggage check in security, and would get something more substantial once I checked through security. I spotted a vending machine nestled in a relatively low-traffic corner of the terminal and rushed over. Already pulling out my credit card and mentally assessing what I had a craving for, so as to save time interacting with the machine. My eyes scanned the colorful array of confection quickly, coming to rest on a tantalizing, rainbow-colored bag of Gummy Bears with a simple white and red logo emblazoned across the bag in what appeared to be a slightly tweaked Helvetica rounded font. Now, I'd like to pause here in the story for a moment to underscore the importance of making proper choices. I was hungry. When you're hungry, you should eat food. Food is defined as a nutritious substance that people consume to maintain life. This is what food is. These days, the definition of the word food has been bastardized, and the meaning has been broadened to include veritably any material that can be digested, or rather chewed and swallowed without causing death or severe illness. Sugar-free gummy bears are not food. They aren't even close to this food. They aren't even from this planet. I imagine their origins being conceived in a boardroom in hell by a top team of creative paid administrators with senior-level demons rubbing their hands together in ghoulish delight as hell's chief chemist slowly lifts the veil on their new creation. The point here being, I made a very, very, very poor choice. I pushed the button, and the vending machine ejected the brightly colored bag into my awaiting hands. I'd always liked gummy bears. They were bright, but rather innocuous. They weren't overly sweet, so as to become cloying, and, of course, each candy came in the visage of a rather happy, docile bear, reminiscent of the picture one's mind-eye holds of all anthropomorphic bears, from Yogi to Winnie. The way I figured it, I was taking a bit of a holiday from life, so I could relax my fastidiously regimented daily schedule to allow for some frivolity. After all, I was going to be in Amsterdam come morning with 16 hours to kill before I had to be training the Dutch employees. Maybe I would take a trip down to one of the coffee shops in the red light district and really let my hair down. No, I wouldn't do that. I would see that area of the city from the bus as I went to the hotel, where I would eat at the hotel restaurant and drink sparkling water. So I'd better enjoy the gummy bears, my one extravagance, to commemorate my break from routine. I joined the queue in the KLM line, which was mercifully short, most likely because all of the passengers for my flight had already been checked through as the flight was scheduled to depart in an hour. I checked my watch again, frowned, and absent-mindedly opened the bag of sugar-free gummy bears and began to munch on them as the line slowly advanced. To be fair, they tasted fine, just like every other manufacturer's brand of colorful candy, and they were sugar-free to boot. This is what made the whole incident that followed so baffling. If they had tasted off or different, I most likely wouldn't have continued to shovel them into my mouth absent-mindedly, while daydreaming about what I would order to eat from room service in my hotel in Amsterdam. As I gave the attendant my e-ticket and she weighed my bags, the first of the pains began in my stomach. I thought nothing of it at first. chalking it up to the fact that I needed something more substantial than gummy worms to tackle my hunger. But over the course of the next 5 minutes, the shooting pain began to come in more rapid succession. At this point, I had my boarding pass printed, and rubbing my stomach a little, I proceeded to security. I briefly entertained the thought of trying to find a restroom before going through security, but at that point my discomfort was manageable, and I didn't think it would get any worse. Certainly not within the moment of time it would take to clear security. I joined the line and started fishing for my passport to present to the agent checking tickets. I felt a thin sheen of sweat break out on my forehead and underarms, and my features flushed for a moment as a wave of heat washed over me. I didn't pay it much heed, as going through security always caused me great anxiety, and I chalked it up to pre-flight jitters. It was only as I stood face to face with the agent and handed her my passport and ticket that I had a glimpse of the agony that was about to begin. It felt like time rippled for a moment, as if my consciousness buckled, so intense was the pain that fired through my bowels. I grimaced spastically and emitted a low moan, and felt myself take an involuntary step sideways. Stars shot through my head briefly, and my vision blurred, and then snapped back into focus. The agent was staring at me with slight consternation, and asked me if I was all right. I pulled myself together, stood up straight, and declared that I was fine, mortified that I had a lapse of decorum, not only in public, but at the security clearance in an airport. As I fumbled off my belt to go through the metal detector, the pain in my stomach increased, and I practically had to sit on the floor to take my shoes off, terrified of what would happen if I bent at the middle to do it. It was becoming increasingly more evident to me that this wasn't just a stomach ache. No, this was something much worse. As a child, I had had a bout of diarrhea after a trip to Mexico with my family. I remember the feeling of nausea that swept through me before my child self had surrendered to the gas pains and parked myself at the toilet for an hour, shitting until I felt like I didn't have any bones left. And that was how I was feeling now, with several key differences. The pain was worse. The sense of an impending bowel movement was so formidable, it gave me temporary amnesia. And it took all of my willpower, all of it, to clench my butt cheeks together to prevent my sphincter from exploding. A sudden shock of pain racked my body, and I half wondered if I was going to give birth to a Tasmanian devil. The crazy, fever-induced image of said cartoon animal chasing Bugs Bunny through the splashy, volcanic shit kettle that was my stomach caused me to elicit a short, maniacal bark of laughter as I approached the metal detector. A wild, distant look in my eyes. Sweat now beginning to pour off me like a long-distance runner in Kenya. The security agent on the other side of the detector shot a quick glance over to her coworker, who narrowed his eyes and made a subtle movement towards his holster. My breathing became uneven as I entered the metal detector, and I realized with alarm that I had taken off my socks without even registering it, and one of my shirt tails was untucked at the front. I held my breath, my eyes bulging dangerously from my head. As the machine scanned me, I shakily moved forward towards the agent for a pat-down. My stomach began to elicit sounds that can only be described as otherworldly. It started off with a sort of bubbling sound heard from afar and grew in pitch and intensity at an alarming rate. My jaw dropped in shock, and what I can only describe as the sound of an agonized, wailing alley cat in heat, with a persistent Doppler effect added to its voice emitted from some nether region of my intestines. The officer's eyes widened in alarm, and she kept her eyes glued to my stomach as she thoroughly